My father said, "Arrive early, we'll celebrate." When I arrived, the server handed me a name badge that said, "Limited guest." My sister murmured, "That means no food." Mom just burst out laughing. I didn't argue, I just pulled up my phone and texted, "Cancel everything right now." 30 minutes later. They wished the words they had said were never spoken. My world shattered the moment I saw that name tag. It wasn't just a piece of plastic, it was a physical manifestation of my family's disdain, an official decree that I was nothing more than a second-class citizen. And as I stared at it, I knew my life, and theirs, would never be the same again. The air in the fancy restaurant already felt heavy, thick with the scent of garlic and the unspoken rules of family gatherings. For years, I'd played the role of the invisible older sister in the Davies family, the one who built her own life in Denver while my parents, David and Susan, showered my younger sister, Chloe, with endless favoritism. Chloe, 25, floated through life, her car payments covered, her credit cards mysteriously paid off, all while I was grinding through student loans and 60-hour work weeks. The favoritism was never subtle. When I graduated from college with honors, they threw me a small dinner at Chili's. When Chloe got her associate's degree after 4 major changes, they rented out a country club for 50 guests. When I bought my first condo at 25, Dad just grunted, "Good for you," and changed the subject. But when Chloe moved into her first apartment last year, Mom spent 3 weeks decorating, and Dad bought her a full suite of brand new furniture. I told myself it was fine. I was independent, successful. I didn't need their approval. I thought I was above their petty games. But 3 months ago, that changed. Chloe announced her engagement to Liam, and our family group chat exploded. Within hours, Mom was planning the engagement party, wedding venue booked, dress shopping scheduled. Every conversation in the Davies household revolved around Princess Chloe's big day. I tried to be supportive, I really did. I offered to help with planning, volunteered to contribute financially, even offered to host the engagement party at my place. But every suggestion was shot down. Mom had better ideas, Dad thought it more appropriate to handle things themselves. 2 weeks before the party, Dad called me. "Olivia, honey, we need to talk about the party." "Sure, Dad." "What's up?" "Need me to pick something up?" "Well, it's about the guest list. We're having it at the Gilded Spoon. You know, that nice Italian place downtown? The one with the private dining room." I knew the Gilded Spoon. Expensive. Easily $75 a head. Sounds lovely, Dad. I'm excited to celebrate Chloe and Liam. A pause. My stomach tightened. Here's the thing, Liv. We're on a bit of a budget, with all the wedding expenses coming up. I should have seen it coming. You want me to contribute to the party costs? Actually, no. We've got that covered. But we're keeping the guest list small. Family only. You understand? Very intimate. Of course, that makes sense. The thing is, we can only afford to cover dinner for immediate family. You know, us, Chloe, Liam, and Liam's parents. But we still want you there for the celebration part. My stomach dropped again. What exactly are you saying, Dad? You can come for the toasts and the cake, of course. But you'd be more of a limited guest. You understand? Limited guest? The words hung in the air like a slap. You're telling me I can come to my sister's engagement party, but I can't eat? It's not personal, Olivia. It's just economics. You're doing well for yourself, and frankly, you don't need us to buy you dinner. Chloe and Liam are just starting out, and Liam's parents are contributing to the wedding, so it's important we treat them properly. I was speechless. Literally. After everything, all the times I'd bitten my tongue, they were telling me I wasn't worth the cost of a dinner plate at my own sister's engagement party. Olivia, you still there? Yeah, Dad, I'm here. So, you'll come? Chloe really wants you there. The old Olivia would have swallowed her pride. She would have shown up with a smile, watched everyone else eat, and pretended everything was fine. But something inside me finally snapped. "I'll be there," I said quietly. "Great. Party starts at 7, but come around 6:30 so we can get some family photos before Liam's parents arrive." After I hung up, I sat in my living room for an hour, just processing. Then I did what any reasonable person would do. I called my best friend, Emily, to vent. "They did what?" Emily practically screamed into the phone. "Olivia, please tell me you're not actually going to this thing." "I don't know what else to do, Em. She's still my sister." "Your sister, who's apparently fine with you being treated like a party crasher at her own engagement?" "Maybe she doesn't know. Maybe Mom and Dad made this decision without telling her." "Olivia, honey, you're too smart to believe that. If Chloe wanted you to have dinner, you'd have dinner. She has Dad wrapped around her little finger." Emily was right, but I wasn't ready to admit it yet. I spent the next 2 weeks going back and forth between anger and resignation. Part of me wanted to skip the party entirely. But the bigger part of me, the part that still desperately wanted my family's approval, couldn't bring myself to miss my sister's big moment. The day of the party, I got ready like I was going to a business meeting. Professional, polished, emotionally armored. I chose a navy blue dress that was nice enough, but not so nice it would upstage the bride-to-be. I did my hair and makeup carefully, not for them, but because I wanted to look like I had my life together. I arrived at the Gilded Spoon at 6:25, just as Dad requested. The restaurant was beautiful, warm lighting, exposed brick, the smell of fresh bread and garlic. I could see the private dining room through the glass doors, elegantly set with white tablecloths, fresh flowers, and place settings for 8 people. 8 people. And I wasn't going to be one of them. I walked up to the hostess stand. "Hi, I'm here for the Davies party." She smiled brightly. "Of course, you must be Olivia. Let me get your name tag." "My what now?" She pulled out a small name tag on a lanyard. The kind you'd wear at a conference. My name was printed neatly at the top. And underneath, in smaller print, it said, "Limited Guest." I stared at it like it was a snake. They had actually, literally, made me a name tag identifying me as a second-class attendee at my own sister's engagement party. The humiliation was so complete, so thoroughly planned, I almost had to admire the cruelty of it. "Is there a problem?" the hostess asked, still holding out the lanyard. "No problem at all," I said, taking it. "Just perfect." I walked into the private dining room. The sight that greeted me confirmed everything I needed to know about my place in this family. The table was set for 8 with beautiful place cards. There was an extra chair pushed against the wall, clearly meant for me, with no place setting, no wine glass, no napkin. I was literally going to be sitting at the kids' table, except there were no kids. "Olivia!" Mom called from across the room where she was arranging flowers. "You made it! Doesn't everything look wonderful?" "It looks great, Mom," I forced a smile. "Really elegant." Dad walked over and gave me a quick hug. "Glad you could make it, kiddo. I know this arrangement is a little unusual, but we appreciate you being flexible." Flexible? That's what they were calling it. Chloe appeared from the bathroom, radiant in a flowing pink dress. She rushed over and hugged me, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the bond we used to have. "Liv, I'm so happy you're here. This is all so crazy. I can barely believe it's happening." "I'm happy for you, Chloe. Liam's a lucky guy." She beamed. But then I saw her eyes flick down to my name tag. For just a second, her smile faltered. I saw something that might have been guilt cross her face. But then Liam appeared with his parents, Eleanor and Robert Miller, and the moment passed. Introductions were made, drinks were poured, I wasn't offered one, and everyone settled into their seats. Everyone except me. I stood awkwardly by my wall chair, watching my family and future in-laws chat and laugh while I remained, literally, on the sidelines. That's when Chloe leaned over and whispered, "That means no food." She said it with a little giggle, like it was a funny inside joke instead of a deliberate exclusion. And then Mom laughed. Actually laughed out loud, not at anything particularly funny, but at the situation. At me, standing there with my limited guest name tag, cheerless and dinnerless. She found it amusing. That's when something inside me died. The last little piece of hope I'd been carrying, that this was all some misunderstanding, that my family actually cared about me, that I meant something to them beyond a convenient target for their dysfunction, it just evaporated. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I didn't beg or plead or try to explain how hurtful this was. Instead, I took out my phone and opened my text messages. I scrolled to a conversation thread I hadn't touched in 3 months, took a deep breath, and typed 6 words that would change everything. Cancel everything immediately. It's over. I hit send and put my phone back in my purse. Then I sat down in my wall chair and waited. "Who are you texting?" Chloe asked, looking a little concerned. "Just work stuff," I said with a smile. "Nothing important." The waiter came by to take drink orders for the table, carefully avoiding eye contact with me. The conversation flowed around me, wedding plans, honeymoon destinations, Liam's new job in marketing. I nodded and smiled and made appropriate sounds, all while watching a clock on my phone. 23 minutes after I sent that text, my phone started ringing. I glanced at the screen. It was exactly who I'd expected. "Excuse me," I said to the table. "I need to take this call." I stepped out into the restaurant's foyer and answered. "Hi, Michael." "Olivia, what the hell is going on? I just got your message. Are you serious right now?" Michael Wright was my ex-boyfriend. We dated for 2 years, broke up 6 months ago, but remained in contact because we had significant shared business interests. Michael was a real estate developer, and I'd invested in several of his projects. More importantly, Michael was Liam's boss at the marketing firm where Liam had just started working 3 months ago. "I'm completely serious, Michael. I want out of all of it. The Riverside project, the downtown condos. Olivia, we're talking about almost $500,000 in active investments. You can't just pull out now." "I can, and I am. Check the partnership agreements. I have a 60-day withdrawal clause on everything. I'm invoking it." There was a long pause. "This is about your family, isn't it? Look, I know they're difficult, but this is going to hurt you financially, too. I'll survive. What I can't survive is feeling like a fool for continuing to support people who treat me like garbage." "Okay, fine. I'll start the paperwork." "But Olivia, Liam's going to lose his job." "What do you mean?" "The only reason I hired him was because you asked me to. You said your future brother-in-law needed a break, and as a favor to you, I created a position for him. If you're pulling your investment, I'm closing the marketing department. There's no budget to keep him on." I'd forgotten about that. 6 months ago, when Liam was struggling to find work, I'd mentioned to Michael that my sister's boyfriend was looking for opportunities. Michael's company didn't really need a marketing person, but I'd invested enough that he was willing to create a position to keep me happy. Liam thought he'd landed the job on his own merit. "Do what you need to do, Michael." "And the wedding venue? Didn't you co-sign something for that?" "Oh, right. The wedding venue." 3 months ago, when Chloe and Liam were trying to book their dream location, the lakefront manor, they'd run into a problem. It required a $15,000 deposit and proof of insurance. Liam's credit was shot, Chloe had no credit history. Mom and Dad had good credit, but not enough liquid cash for the deposit. So guess who got asked to help? We'll pay you back as soon as the wedding gifts come in, Dad had promised. It's just a temporary cash flow issue. I co-signed the contract and put the deposit on my credit card. $15,000 to ensure my sister could have her dream wedding at a beautiful historic mansion overlooking the lake. Michael, I need you to call the Lakefront Manor tomorrow morning. Tell them Olivia Davies is withdrawing her guarantee on the Liam Miller and Chloe Davies wedding contract. Jesus, Olivia, you're really scorching the earth here. They should have thought about that before they made me wear a name tag that says limited guest at my own sister's engagement party. I could hear Michael typing. Okay, I'm looking at the Lakefront Manor contract now. If you withdraw your guarantee, they'll need the full balance paid within 30 days, or they'll cancel the booking and keep the deposit. That's their problem, not mine. What about the catering? Didn't you coordinate something there, too? God, yes, the catering. Chloe had wanted a specific caterer, Ambrosia Events. They were booked solid, but I happened to know the owner, Rebecca, from a corporate event I'd organized. I called Rebecca personally and asked her to make room. She'd agreed to squeeze them in as a favor to me, even bumping another client. Michael, can you conference Rebecca from Ambrosia Events into this call? Are you sure about this, Liv? I'm sure. 3 minutes later, Rebecca was on the line. Olivia, how lovely to hear from you. How's the wedding planning going for your sister? Hi, Rebecca. I need to ask you a favor. I'm withdrawing my personal recommendation for the Chloe Davies wedding. I know you adjusted your schedule to accommodate them because I asked you to, and I'm releasing you from that obligation. There was a pause. Oh, well, that's unusual. Is everything all right? Everything's fine. I just realized that I overstepped by getting involved. They should handle their own vendor relationships. I see. Well, to be honest, Olivia, without your personal guarantee, I'm not sure we can accommodate their event. We had to turn down 3 other bookings to fit them in, and their deposit was minimal. I was extending terms based on my relationship with you. I understand completely. Do whatever makes sense for your business. After I hung up, I sat in the restaurant foyer for a moment, processing what I'd just done. In the span of one phone call, I'd potentially derailed Liam's career, jeopardized the wedding venue, and canceled the catering. The ripple effects were going to be significant. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I walked back into the private dining room where everyone was now seated and appetizers had been served. 8 plates of beautiful antipasto, 8 glasses of wine, 8 bread plates with olive oil for dipping. And me, still standing beside my empty chair against the wall. Everything okay? Dad asked. You were gone for a while. Everything's perfect, I said, sitting down in my assigned spot. Just handling some business. The conversation resumed, but I noticed Liam checking his phone repeatedly. About 10 minutes later, it rang. Sorry, I should probably take this, he said, glancing at the screen. It's my boss. He stepped out, and I watched through the glass door as his face went from confused to panicked. When he came back 5 minutes later, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. What's wrong, honey? Chloe asked. There's some kind of issue at work. Michael needs to meet with me first thing Monday morning. Something about budget cuts. Eleanor Miller, Liam's mother, frowned. Budget cuts? But you just started there 3 months ago. I know. I'm sure it's nothing serious. But Liam kept checking his phone throughout dinner, and his mood got progressively darker. Meanwhile, I sat in my chair, watching my family enjoy their meal while I remained unfed and increasingly invisible. The main course arrived, beautiful plates of osso buco and risotto that smelled amazing. I watched 8 people eat while my stomach growled audibly. Chloe glanced over at me a few times, starting to look uncomfortable, but she didn't say anything. It was Robert Miller, Liam's father, who finally addressed the elephant in the room. I'm sorry, I have to ask, he said, looking directly at my parents. Why isn't Olivia eating? Did she already have dinner? The table went silent. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. Chloe suddenly became very interested in her risotto. It's a bit complicated, Dad said. Olivia is here for the celebration, but we had to limit the dinner portion to immediate family and Liam's parents. Robert looked confused. But isn't Olivia immediate family? She's Chloe's sister. Well, yes, but... Are you saying you invited your daughter to her sister's engagement party, but didn't include her in the dinner? The silence stretched on. Eleanor Miller was staring at my parents like they'd grown extra heads. Liam looked mortified. Chloe was still studying her plate. It was a budget consideration, Mom said defensively. Olivia is doing very well for herself. She doesn't need us to buy her dinner. Robert Miller set down his fork. I'm sorry, but this is the most bizarre thing I've ever witnessed. You invited your own daughter to a family celebration and made her wear a name tag that says she can't eat? It's really okay, I said quietly. I understand the situation. No, Robert said firmly. It's not okay. Eleanor, can you please ask the waiter to bring Olivia a menu? We'll cover her dinner. That's not necessary, Dad started. Actually, it is necessary. I'm not comfortable continuing this meal while Olivia sits there with no food. It's inhuman. Eleanor was already signaling the waiter. Please bring a menu for Olivia, and we'd like to add her to our portion of the bill. No! Dad said sharply. This is our event, and we'll handle it how we see fit. Robert Miller stood up. Then we'll handle it how we see fit. Eleanor, we're leaving. Dad, please. Liam said desperately. Don't make a scene. We're not making a scene, son. We're removing ourselves from a scene that someone else created. This is not how our family treats people. Eleanor was already gathering her purse. Liam, Chloe, we love you both very much, but we cannot sit here and watch your future sister-in-law be treated like a servant at her own sister's engagement party. But what about the toasts? Chloe asked, looking panicked. We'll celebrate you properly at the wedding, Eleanor said, assuming there is one. And they left. Just walked out, leaving Liam devastated and my parents sitting in shocked silence. The waiter appeared a moment later, looking confused. I understand there was a request for an additional menu? No, Dad said firmly. We don't need anything else. But Chloe suddenly spoke up. Actually, yes. Please bring Olivia a menu and add her to the tab. Dad's head snapped toward her. Chloe, we discussed this. No, you decided this without asking me. Chloe's voice was shaking. I never said I wanted my sister excluded from my engagement dinner. We're trying to be financially responsible. Mom interjected. By humiliating Olivia? By making Liam's parents so uncomfortable they walked out of my engagement party? Chloe stood up, tears forming in her eyes. Do you realize what you've done? Liam's parents think we're monsters. And they're right. She turned to me, and for the first time all evening, she looked me directly in the eyes. Liv, I am so sorry. I should have said something earlier. I should have stopped this before it started. It's okay, Maddie. No, it's not okay. Nothing about this is okay. The waiter was still standing there awkwardly, menu in hand. Chloe reached for it. Please bring Olivia whatever she wants and put it on my tab. Liam and I will cover it. Chloe, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You're my sister, and I love you, and I should have protected you from this. But Liam's phone was ringing again. And this time, when he answered it, I could see his world collapsing in real time. He stepped away from the table, but I could hear pieces of his conversation. What do you mean the wedding is cancelled? No, I don't understand. The deposit is non-refundable, but we sent invitations already. When he came back to the table, he looked shell-shocked. Chloe, we need to talk privately. They stepped outside, and I could see them through the window having a very intense conversation. Chloe was crying. Liam was gesturing frantically. Both of them kept looking back at the table where the rest of us sat in uncomfortable silence. What's going on out there? Mom asked. I think they're having some venue issues, I said casually, cutting into the steak that had finally been brought to me. Wedding planning can be so stressful. When Chloe and Liam came back inside, both of them looked like they'd been hit by a truck. There's been a problem with the wedding venue, Chloe announced to the table. They're saying there's an issue with our deposit, and they might have to cancel our booking. What kind of issue? Dad asked. Liam cleared his throat. Apparently, the financial guarantee that was backing our contract has been withdrawn. The venue is demanding full payment within 30 days, or they'll cancel and keep our deposit. Dad's face went white. What financial guarantee? And that's when Chloe looked directly at me. The guarantee that Olivia co-signed for us 3 months ago. The entire table turned to stare at me. I took a sip of the wine that had finally been served and met their gazes calmly. I withdrew my co-signature tonight, I said matter-of-factly. You what? Dad exploded. I removed my financial guarantee from their wedding contract. I also cancelled my personal recommendation with their caterer and ended my business relationship with Liam's employer. Why would you do that? Mom shrieked. I set down my wine glass and looked around the table at my family. Because you made it very clear tonight where I stand with this family. You literally gave me a name tag that said I wasn't worth feeding. You set up a chair for me against the wall like I was a party crasher. You invited Liam's parents to eat at my sister's engagement party, but not me. So, I decided to withdraw my support for people who clearly don't value me. That's completely different. Dad said. This is Chloe's wedding. And this was Chloe's engagement party. But that didn't stop you from excluding me. Olivia, Chloe said quietly. I understand you're hurt, but this is going to ruin everything. The venue, the catering, Liam's job. It's all falling apart. Then you should have thought about that before you whispered that means no food and giggled about it like it was funny. Chloe's face crumpled. I know that was awful, and I'm sorry, but please don't punish me for Mom and Dad's decision. I'm not punishing anyone, I said calmly. I'm simply withdrawing my financial support from people who have made it clear they don't consider me family. You want to treat me like an outsider? Fine, but outsiders don't co-sign your wedding venues or use their business connections to get you jobs. Liam was frantically typing on his phone. The caterer isn't answering. It's going straight to voicemail. That's because I spoke to Rebecca earlier tonight. She's releasing your dates back to her available inventory. Olivia, you can't do this. Mom pleaded. Think about Chloe. This is her wedding. Mom, you didn't think about Chloe when you decided to humiliate her sister at her engagement party. You didn't think about how it would look when Liam's parents saw you treating me like hired help. You didn't think about how it would affect Chloe when her future in-laws walked out in disgust. We can fix this, Dad said desperately. We can apologize. We can make this right. 30 minutes ago, you could have fixed it by treating me with basic human decency. Now it's too late. I stood up and put my napkin on my plate. Thank you for the steak, Chloe. It was delicious. Liam, I'm sorry your parents had to see your family's true nature tonight. Mom, Dad, I hope you're happy with the money you saved by not feeding me. I headed toward the door, but Chloe caught my arm. Liv, please. I'm begging you. Don't do this. I'll do anything to make this right. I looked at my little sister, who was crying and desperate, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the old guilt. The old need to fix everything and make everyone happy. But then I remembered the name tag, the empty chair against the wall, the laughter. Chloe, if you want to have a relationship with me going forward, you're going to need to decide whether you want parents who play favorites or a sister who supports you. Because after tonight, you can't have both. I walked out of the Gilded Spoon and got in my car. My phone started ringing immediately, but I turned it off. I drove home in silence, feeling oddly peaceful for the first time in months. The next morning, I woke up to 23 missed calls and 47 text messages. Most were from Chloe, begging me to reconsider. A few were from Mom and Dad, alternating between anger and desperation. Liam had sent me a long message explaining he'd lost his job and begging me for a reference. I deleted all of them without responding. Over the next few weeks, the full consequences of my actions became clear. Liam was indeed laid off from Michael's company. The Lakefront Manor cancelled their booking and kept the $15,000 deposit. The caterer released their dates, and finding a replacement with 6 months' notice proved nearly impossible. Liam's parents told him they couldn't support a wedding into a family that treated people so poorly, and they withdrew their offer to help pay for the honeymoon. The wedding was postponed indefinitely. Chloe called me crying several times, but I didn't answer. Finally, she showed up at my condo on a Saturday morning, looking exhausted and defeated. "Can we talk?" she asked when I opened the door. I let her in and made coffee while she sat at my kitchen table, fidgeting with her engagement ring. "I broke up with Liam," she said. I sat down my coffee mug. "Chloe, no, you don't have to do that. His parents were right. The way Mom and Dad treated you was inhuman, and I just sat there and let it happen." Liam defended them. "He said you were being dramatic and that you should have just been grateful to be included at all." Oh, when I heard him say that, I realized he was just as bad as they are. If he thinks it's okay to treat my sister like garbage, then he doesn't understand the most basic thing about who I am. We sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee and processing the wreckage of the last month. "I've been thinking a lot about our childhood," Chloe said eventually. "About how different things were for you versus me. I always told myself that you didn't mind, that you were stronger and more independent, that you didn't need the same kind of support I did." "I did mind," I said quietly. "I minded a lot. I know. I think I've always known, but it was easier to pretend I didn't see it. It was easier to take the money and the attention and the special treatment and tell myself I deserved it." "You did deserve it, Chloe. You deserve to be loved and supported. The problem was never that they treated you well. It was that they treated me poorly. Can you forgive me? Not them, but me, for being complicit in it for so many years?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen before. She wasn't the spoiled princess I'd convinced myself she was. She was just a woman who had finally realized that love isn't a zero-sum game, and that her parents' favoritism had damaged both of us. "I can forgive you," I said. "But I need you to understand that I'm done with Mom and Dad. I'm done pretending their behavior is acceptable just to keep the peace. I'm done being the family scapegoat. I understand. And for what it's worth, I think you're braver than I am. You're plenty brave. You just broke up with your fiancé because he didn't respect your sister. That takes guts." Chloe laughed shakily. "I guess it does." We talked for 3 more hours that day. Really talked, for the first time in years. We talked about our childhood, about the different ways our parents had failed us both, and about what we wanted our relationship to look like going forward. It's been 6 months since the engagement party disaster. Chloe and I have lunch every other week, and we're rebuilding our relationship on our own terms, without our parents' involvement. She's back in school, getting her bachelor's degree in social work, paying for it herself with student loans and a full-time job she found at a local non-profit. Liam found another marketing position eventually, though it pays significantly less than the job he had with Michael's company. I heard through Chloe that he and his parents finally understood why I reacted so strongly. And Liam even sent me a formal apology letter acknowledging that he should have spoken up during the dinner instead of remaining silent. Mom and Dad have reached out a few times, mostly through Chloe, asking me to come to family dinners or holiday celebrations. I've declined every invitation. I'm not interested in pretending that nothing happened or in giving them another opportunity to make me feel like a second-class family member. Some people think I went too far. My friend Emily thinks I'm a hero. My therapist says I set healthy boundaries. My coworkers are just impressed that I had the guts to unravel my own sister's wedding over what they saw as a slight. But honestly, I don't think about their opinions much anymore. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not trying to earn anyone's approval or prove my worth to people who should have valued me automatically. I'm just living my life on my own terms. Last week, I got a text from Chloe with a photo of her report card. She got straight A's in her first semester back in school. The text said, "Thanks for showing me what self-respect looks like." That message meant more to me than any wedding invitation ever could have. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just accepted the name tag, sat in my wall chair, and pretended everything was fine. Chloe would have married Liam. My parents would have continued their pattern of treating me as a convenient resource rather than a valued family member. And I would have spent the rest of my life wondering why I never felt like I belonged in my own family. Instead, I chose to blow it all up. I chose to demand better. I chose to show them that their treatment of me had real consequences. Was it nuclear? Absolutely. Did it hurt people I cared about? Yes. Do I regret it? Not for a single second. Because that night at the Gilded Spoon, I finally learned the most important lesson of my life: you teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to accept. And I'm no longer willing to accept anything less than what I deserve. The name tag still sits in my jewelry box, right next to my grandmother's pearls and my college graduation ring. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, and I remember how it felt to sit against that wall, watching my family eat while I went hungry. It reminds me never to go hungry again, not for food, and not for respect. Chloe is coming over for dinner this weekend. She's bringing Daniel, her new boyfriend, and I'm excited to meet him. She says he's already heard all about the engagement party disaster and his response was, "Good for Olivia. A family that doesn't feed you isn't family worth having." I like him already. We're going to have a full table with proper place settings and enough food for everyone. We're going to laugh and share stories and treat each other with the respect and love that everyone deserves from their family. And nobody will be wearing name tags. If you found yourself in a similar situation, watching your family deliberately diminish you, what do you think you would have done?